Just to get started quickly, I'll tell you a little bit about Vymo for the ones who don't already know us. Vymo operates in the sales enablement and acceleration space. We help financial enterprises across the globe improve sales processes, partner relations, and engagements. We've worked closely with over 60 leading enterprises such as AIA, AXA, FE Credit in Vietnam, Berkshire Hathaway in the US, and what we do is we are a sales engagement platform. Moving along to give you a little bit of context on today's discussion, we recently held a roundtable in Thailand with a few top insurance leaders, and we learned that omnichannel and end-to-end are the catchphrases of the day when it comes to insurance companies who are looking for digital enhancement in their processes, and with good reason, right? But more often than not, the approach taken to implement omnichannel and end-to-end doesn't work well in practice. We understood that you need a comprehensive strategy, even online or offline, and a way to effectively implement these kind of technical solutions across your company, right? To cover this exactly, we have today Jennifer Villalobos, former Chief Digital and Technology Officer for Prudential. Prior to Prudential, Jenn had led a high-performing business development team responsible for large-scale digital partnerships at NTUC Singapore. And prior to that, her defining career building blocks were set at Google, where she worked for over 12 years. Jenn has more than 29 years of experience helping companies transform their digital and technological capabilities to develop sustainable competitive advantage in the digital age. Thank you so much, Jenn, for joining us today. Along with Jenn, we have Rajesh Sabhlok. He is our Managing Director, Asia Pacific at Vymo. Having worked for over 2 decades in the financial industry, he brings a wealth of experience in delivering gold standard sales and distribution strategies to global banks and insurance companies. Thank you, Rajesh, for joining us. And Gordon, our very own inside sales mastermind, will be facilitating this conversation between Jenn and Rajesh today. Just before we start, I want to let everybody know that you can just put in all your questions in the Q&A section, and Jenn or Rajesh will pick them up live. And in any case, you cannot hear or see the presenters and the speakers, please put in the chat option. I'll figure all the technical difficulties out. All right, that's it for the introduction. I'll let Gordon start the conversation.
Hi, Jenn. Hi, Rajesh.
Hey, Gordon. Mushkan.
And
nice meeting you, Jenn.
A very warm welcome to our attendees and participants on the floor. So today, certainly looking forward to a both engaging and intriguing session with experienced persons like Jenn and Rajesh in the insurance industry. So before I begin, the topic today obviously will be focused more skewed to omnichannel. I would like to touch on the omnichannel, actually a brief or generic description of omnichannel, which is an approach that enables insurers to provide an integrated, seamless experience to their users across the value chain, starting from engagement all the way to the claims. Well, we can take a look at some of the keywords like integrated, seamless experience, as well as the value chain, and from engagement to claims, which is of course a end-to-end segment here that we are obviously discussing on. So may I bring your attention to Jenn? What are the key mistakes in play that the way insurance company uses technology solutions, or in the way that companies designing these solutions are attempting to solve the problem in the relevant industry?
Sure. Thank you so much, Gordon. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to the Vymo team to invite me for such an amazing session. We had a very, I would say, Rajesh, right, a very thought-provoking post brief from the event that we ran here in Thailand a couple of months ago. And I think I've had plenty of time to kind of reflect and also analyze on what is next, right? We talked about the fact that the word omnichannel is utilized as a blanket kind of panacea to solve a lot of questions, but when you actually peel that off, we find that there's much more complexities. And I think in answer to your question, Gordon, around the biggest challenge is that I think everybody really doesn't understand or underestimates the complexity of being able to take value from customer insights to drive them into meaning to then deliver business results. It's actually very, very hard. And I'm sure every digital insurtech company that's out there and every financial tech company that's out there would say, well, why is that? And it's if you take a step back for legacy companies like NTUC Income, like Prudential, like AIA, and any out there has gone through a much more longer process in their transformation journey. Why? Because they started out mainly as product-led industries. What does this mean? The value that they bring was based on actuary sciences that then provide a product that provided value and meaning through a contract. That world has changed. So imagine from building the legacy, your equity, your brand around understanding that value of product to suddenly shift into customer is very, very challenging. And so I kind of broke it down in 3 areas, and this is just based on my own experience. By any means, it's not a rocket science or any solution, but what I see, it comes down to prioritization. So the challenges that you have is that you're transforming so many pieces of your business end to end, from your back-end systems, your middle systems, trying to sustain, adaptable, great customer services tools, great sales tools, front end, trying to launch apps, trying to do, digital innovation. In that myriad of opportunities, there's also a lot of challenges, which is where do we start and how do you prioritize? So I think that's the first one. The second one, capability, right? Let's be really honest. Digital transformation is a big word, but it's all around change management. And change management is pretty much ignited by understanding and by capability and giving the people in time and the partners to work together to drive that capability. My experience has shown me that working with great partners, SaaS providers, as well as technology partners that go hand in hand with the company to help us grow the capability internally, have higher success of chance than just coming in and building out the solution and then leaving with a company pretty much, even though they have the assets and they have the equity and they have the IP, not understanding how to actually make the most out of it. And then the third one, what I call, and this I actually use when I work with a lot of founders and startups in the insurtech space, which is tactical capacity. And just think about it this way. We're in a world where there is so much possibility, right? It is a myriad of endless opportunity. And we all have FOMO. But the reality is that we operate in a world of limited options and very limited capability. And so how do you merge the two together is by developing what I call those very clear steps between strategy and execution, called tactical capacity, which is, do you understand your communication? Does everybody understand the same definition? When we say MVP, what is a minimal viable product? It is not a perfect enterprise solution. Are we on the same boat of an MVP versus a proof of concept? Like really going deep and nitty gritty on understanding the communication is critical. The second one, a burning imperative. Goalposts change, priorities change. We understand that. But for execution to really happen properly, there has to be a follow through on what your burning imperative is. And to be really honest, nowadays, a lot of insurance companies hire very strong, very great, talented digital people that understand the business, but then forget that these people don't need long, endless nights of planning. They just need strategic goals and north to be able to execute. So being much more nimble with what they have to do is critical. The third one, and this is a hard one, and it's about simple tracking. And I know we have so many amazing tools. And Vymo, you guys provide us with so many tools on how to drive insights, on how to drive value, and how to drive profitability. But the challenge that you have is you have fragmentation across different business units because not everybody is utilizing each of these tools at their best. And then the last one, what I call role sorting. We hire for specific skills. In the world of data and data sciences in particular, there's a lot of confusion between what a data analytics person does, what a data scientist who knows how to code does, what a data scientist who can actually bridge the gap between your proxy marketing data and your internal data does, versus a data operations person who's an engineering background, right? And I think having that complexity is hard. So when we're hiring and when we're sourcing and where we're partnering, even with great vendors and great technology partners, it's critical that you understand that these skills need to be stratable And then it's not just fit one person for one solution, but they can actually go end to end. And I think those are the three things that I've seen in my last 4 years of experience working with insurance industry and trying to drive transformation.
Well, thanks, Jen. That is certainly a very good 4 years that you had. Yeah, I'd like to bring your attention again to the multiple tools that you mentioned, as well as the partners, and in this case will be channel management, probably onboarding as well, both external and internal. Rajesh, I mean, given your experience in the array of tools and the multiple tools at the disposal of individual companies, or in fact agents or agencies themselves, what do you think of these multiple tools will have in play in respect to the insurance industry?
No, fair question. In fact, first of all, I'll start with saying, Jen, I think very well articulated in terms of your experience with respect to how companies are struggling with and what are the challenges they're facing with respect to having a technical, let's say, an architecture that can support the entire business. And again, let's not forget, insurance, and that to life insurance was the most laggard when it comes to digital adoption and technology adoption. These have been legacy industries, like you mentioned, with legacy systems and solutions. And the way technology, I guess, initially started off in the insurance space was to look at, how can we streamline backend processes? How can we use technology to, limit, let's say, the fraud that may happen with respect to claims and the processes getting streamlined, etc. It is the recent incidences of COVID and everything else which actually moved the focus of technology to also looking at what can be done at the front end. I mean, we're talking about omnichannel. Many of the omni-channel, let's say, touch points with customers, the digital touch points have only, been set up in the last couple of years. And again, let's not forget, there's different level of maturity of companies. So certain companies are way ahead in their maturity curve when it comes to digital, whereas some others are really, just sitting on the fence and looking at what others are doing and maybe really, trying to just copy. Now, what this led to, and I think what you alluded to also, Jen, was, islands of point solutions being created just to solve a specific problem. So now the challenge is that many of the companies that we've been discussing with and met, they have a lot of point solution, and that's the point that also got in your point about multiple tools being made available to them, which is serving and solving for a certain aspect. Now the challenge is, how many tools would an agent or a salesperson want to use to accomplish his work on a normal day, right? Ideally, he would want to just use one tool, right? Everything else should actually be either integrated with it or stitched together in a manner where he has a seamless experience of going through just one solution and not actually going out and coming in of that solution. So that is the challenge of having multiple point solution in place. And again, some of these may be in different, technically maybe not integrated anyways. So it's not talking to each other. Data is sitting in one system, not available to the other system. So you can imagine the amount of the complexities that Jen was referring to when you start peeling these, technical architecture and seeing what are these solutions that are available and how can we now, make use of all the data. The first level obviously is to ensure that we have one place where all the data is coming in, and then every other solution can access that data and use that data. Now, from our perspective, or from the point that you're making about the insurance sector, multiple solutions, there could be something for underwriting, there could be something for in terms of sales, activity management, there could be something for lead management, there could be something for a CRM system itself, where you're trying to capture information about the customers. So and again, they would have a point of sale solution, so they maybe need to show some pitch decks to the customer and also illustrations, and then application processing, so payment gateway. So you can imagine the kind of various things that people may be dealing with on the sales front. So I feel, from our perspective, or from the insurance industry's perspective, to make the life simpler, how can we have a single solution with a single front end, which either does the entire thing end to end, the entire journey with respect to a customer and let's say a salesperson's engagement with the customer. So which could be digital, could be physical. I mean, we are going to be in a digital environment, so physical and digital. So none of these will exist without each other. So question is, how can we make the most of both of these, touch points that we have, all the physical touch points, all the digital touch points, all integrated to the extent that whatever experience the customer is having or whatever information the customer is getting on one platform is not different from what he's going to get on the other platform. So, and again, the process itself, the day in my life, running through the same one system with at the back end stitched together with other systems that are there, would be the need of the hour if you want adoption. The problem is going to be that this is going to lead to confusion, and Second, as I said, you would not have an ability to analyze data. The whole idea of digital tools and tech solutions is, as Jen again pointed out, there's so much data that's coming about the behavior of the customer, about the behavior of the salesperson himself when he's dealing with the customers, and how does this behavior translate into outcomes, and which behavior is having what kind of impact on the outcome. Now, for all this to happen, you need to have a single thread, right? Starting from each salesperson, his behaviors and his customers that he's dealing with, right till the customer either closes, and then in the journey with the company where claims are happening, or he lapses his policy, that entire journey needs to be tracked. And that's when you will get multiple data points and you will be able to analyze. So the value of this is going to come if you get all these data points in one place and you can analyze that, right? So to my mind, that challenge of multiple tools needs to be addressed, and that's a big challenge. And I've heard companies, I've spoken to them, some of them say they have 7 tools that their agents are using. Some say there are 5, right? Now, and so add to this learning management system, add to this marketing, tech solutions, add to this campaign management, add to this incentives. So you can imagine now there are about 8 or 10 different solutions that they will need to work with. So I think the best way to go about this is maybe either look at one solution which does this end to end, or look at a solution which can stitch this together for the insurance companies.
Thanks, Rajesh. I believe you're actually referring to, let's say, a SPG, a single pane of glass, whereby the users or the management will be using a single platform, at least one or maybe even 2, to define their sales operation and their targeted revenues and stuff like that. Jen, I understand that you are active in various geographies and regional as well, NTUC, Singapore, and Thailand as well. So when we talk about digital transformation, there will be hurdles as well. I mean, cultural transformation is also another hurdle. But what are the key hurdles that you have faced or experienced during this journey in terms of vision?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, right? Because obviously we love to say that the majority of companies like think global, but act locally, right? And that is in some way true. But in reality, if you look at the challenges really go back down to people, individuals, right? We all understand the famous framework around people, processes, and technology, which actually accelerate our platforms, which is now then the new third P, right? But if I look at it from a regional perspective, it all comes down to individual. And I want to take a page of what Rajesh just said, which is if you're expecting the business drivers, right, who generally tend to be your individual contributors, to deliver results and learn new technology and learn a new language and learn new customer insights and learn what your new partner wants, and then learn 9 to 10, 20 tools, that is a massive gap. It is very, very challenging. And we know that we can only reduce some level of that complexity and that fragmentation. We already do it, right, with great programs. You send people on to training. And at Prudential, we work very closely with Databricks teams. You can have all these, I would call these vertical programs to help enable the people. But the biggest challenge that you're going to have is as you're changing and your customers are changing and your customers' needs and wants are changing, the way that you look at the data, the insights will also change. The tool needs to remain consistent, right? If I go back to what I talked about, that tactical capacity and the tracking and the tools, that is critical. Why? We already have complexities in language and in basic communications that can be solved over time. We already have different levels of maturity in the company and different levels of knowledge within the people that can also be resolved on the go. But when you add complexity of different tools telling you different metrics, then that is, I would say, about 80% of the time. And the biggest hurdle, to be honest, Gordon, is that impacts in 3 very critical ways, which is with time, you waste time. You waste money, which I'm sure a lot of CFOs don't like it. And I was challenged by my CFOs across both businesses several times, and rightly so, right? Where's the results? Where's the value of what we're investing in? And then third one, with resources. A lot of people just get frustrated. You end up with your resources pretty much being jack of all trades and master of none.
I see. I mean, these are some of the key negatives or consequences that we can expect based on the three areas that you have summarized. Rajesh, I mean, these three negative consequences that Jenn has mentioned, what are the areas that we can actually overcome by employing better tools, or is it a mindset, or is just better planning for our organization itself?
Yeah, so it is a mix of all of these, right? And as Jenn pointed out, there is a bit of change management that needs to happen. A lot of things are moving. There are a lot of moving parts in terms of the customer themselves, as in their expectations, because of dealing with some high-tech e-commerce and other companies where they can just see, like, click, and buy, right, in just one cycle, and that makes it very simple for them. And they're expecting that level of maturity, digital maturity, to come from other companies that they deal with. I mean, most of them are moved to one tap, right? You book a cab, one tap. You want to order something, one tap. So now they want that experience to also reflect in insurance and other even banking, so for that matter. So now the customer wants to be reached, accessed, is also changing, and so the insurance companies have to be available to the customer 24/7, as they call it, right? So there needs to be avenues to be doing that. And now we're talking about also, as I said, the phygital environment. So physical doesn't go away. Insurance is a product. If you look at general insurance, you look at let's say a hospital cash plan, or you look at a travel insurance policy. These policies are low advice or no advice products, and so these kind of products can be sold digitally. You don't really potentially need a field force to be selling them. But now you talk about a universal life policy, or you talk about a complicated medical and surgical policy and plans. Now, customers themselves, however educated they may be, they may still be challenged in terms of really understanding the terms and the scope of the coverage and everything else, right? So there is a need for an advisor, an intermediary. The only thing is, how can we use digital to equip the intermediary to be able to address and meet the customer in the manner the customer wants to be met and discuss, right? So that enablement, so that's where the change management comes in. Now, also in many countries, the agency team are older generation of people. I mean, so they have their own challenges with respect to now adopting a technology. So which means technology, by very definition, right, if I'm going to use a tool, by very definition, it should make my life simpler. If it's going to make my life complicated, why will I use a tool? So the tool has to be something which will make my life simpler. So that bit, so they will have, let's say, a mental block. We need to ensure that through training, through education, to coaching, through usage of the solution, showing them that, right? And also maybe the other way that I like doing most of the time is, there will be early adopters of technology in every company, right? So get them and see and showcase them as the heroes internally, because they would have achieved some success with it. They will talk to their brethren saying, I am an agent myself, and this is how I'm using it, and this is the value I'm getting from it. So when they hear from their own people, they know that they understand the limitations or the challenges that they're facing in their day-to-day life. And if somebody else has managed to do it, that gives them some confidence. You and I, or anybody else, leadership in the company telling them to do that, will not have the same impact. It's coming from their own people who've done this and experienced the benefits of it. So clearly, the change management is the biggest issue that we need to address here. And the tools from the company's perspective, like we said, how can we reduce it? How can we have the single pane of glass experience? Again, to make it simpler, as I said, technology should make the life simple, right? So how can we use that and showcase them, saying, we are here to make your life easier. Here, based on your data, I'm going to give you nudges and suggestions which will make you a better salesperson or better performer. So there is value in it. Why would I want to use the tool if you're going to just track me?
Mm-hmm.
So where is it?
Add on to that, Rajesh, because you've hit it on the nail. And sorry, Gordon, just because I want to finish off that point around the complexities, right? And it's agents are. I sometimes I feel so sorry for agents and financial advisors and sellers within Think and direct partners, just because I have sat next to them to watch the myriad and the plethora of processes and just tools that they have to manage on a day-to-day basis. And I can easily say that about 60% of the time of a seller will be spent just organizing, reporting, fixing, printing, and around the rest of the 40 actually selling, which is a really poor use of time, right? And so to have the right selling digital tools, at least simple ones and super critical that will enhance the capability for selling, which at the end of the day, especially if you go into life insurance, it's so complicated, is what agents really, really need. I'll give you an example. Recently, even this is just as a consumer ourselves, right? We moved, my family and I, we moved to Thailand 3 years ago, and my husband wanted to shift over to a policy here in Thailand. And obviously, you know, we went to the company that I was working for, and in that process, what I've noticed was the determination of the sellers, the professionalism to have that personalized, because they own the product, they own the experience, they wanted to make it really personalized and meaningful to us. All of that was very rushed. And when I asked, I'm going, hey, wait, why do you think you felt that you were like on a time? And she said to me, well, the problem is that I have to go back and we have to close and we have to do this. And I felt a little bit sorry, because what she should be focusing on is on spending time with the customer, with us, and with my husband in this case. So then she can go back and worry about whatever she can do. She should be able to do it on mobile on her way home, not having to going back into the office to be closing things. And I think this is something that is very real. If you think about how it impacts time, money, and resources. So to have the proper tools for the agent is important. The second one is that they are exposed to beta testing everything. And I find it slightly unfair. And the reason I say that is because they already have a massive target. And so one recommendation that I give to companies, and Prudential actually did do this, was, well, let's ensure that we look at the champions and the much more future ready agents that can actually enable and are faster at adopting new technologies to scale out. And that always definitely helps 100%, instead of trying to push it out mainstream. It takes time, but I do think that if the tool and the capacity is simplified, you will see a higher chance of success.
Well, that's definitely interesting thoughts coming from both Rajesh and Jen. I mean, we are now focusing more on the front end, which is the sales side. As we go upstream to the companies itself, how would they utilize their tech stack to map out the most important customer journey, all the sources of value that will be in place? Jen, what do you think about that?
It all starts with the data, Gordon, right? Journeys are based on the insights, not the other way around. I think what I've seen in the past, and this was even in my time at Google, was working with fintech and with other industry partners, especially travel, was that we were so eager to come in and to create the journey on what experience, and everybody has their own experience, what a perfect journey looks like. And so really quickly, I understood that what was missing was a sound data strategy that can inform how the journeys can look like. Because the hard piece is, you develop the assets, you create it, you kind of use some level of insights and reports, you develop these journeys, you do some alpha testing on them, right, before you launch them onto to beta and then full scale launch, right? And then at this point, you're looking at the post data. You're not integrating with your NDMP, you're not integrating with the rest that's coming through. And what happens is that it gets lost, right? And so the execution, as beautiful as the journeys from a CX can be, and remember, when we talk about CX, it's not only about design, this is actually about functionality and features that add value in a really quick way that is meaningful to the customer, right? To be able to do that is like in the afterthought. And so what my experience has been is that many companies go back and go, oh, we have to iterate and change the journey, because we were missing all these data points. And so I think it's really important that you have that simplicity to understand, where are the key insights being derived from? Where are they being derived from? Are they being derived from your sellers? Are they being derived from your web page? Are they being derived by your mobile app? The key insights. Number two, who are making those key insights with, how do they transform it into meaning, which is a very human process that will lend itself to some level of error, right? And so this is where I find it super critical that in order for any company to have a great digital journeys, by the way, they have to be dynamic, they have to be able to change and customize. It all starts with data. And I'll give you an example. Everybody uses, like in travel, right? Everybody uses Agoda, or you could use the booking.com. The way the aggregators really think about user journeys is quite simplified, and it's actually quite standard. What people talk about, the mass customization at scale, is almost impossible on an aggregator side. if you look at any hotel site, and if you've ever booked directly for any boutique hotel or any hotel, you have more of that customization, that personalization, right? In the case of insurance, they have both. They have the depth of the data and they have the breadth of the experience. Being able to stitch that up is not easy. It's quite challenging. But once you get the foundational work and a proper roadmap of that strategy done, then you can start stitching what those journeys look like. Rajesh, what are your thoughts on that?
So, Jen, completely agree with you. I think one simple way to look at it from my perspective also was, let's say, a sales process as a journey, right? In terms of saying, okay, how are you going to engage with the prospective customer? What are the various touch points that you would be using with the customer? And now the point that you made about the data. So all the engagement that you're having with the customer across these touch points, there's data being created. That data is valuable, but only if you know how to use the data. I mean, like you were mentioning, right? So it's about saying, okay, that information, how do we, then correlate this with outcomes at the end, right? I mean, which type of customers you dealt with? How successful are you as a salesperson in dealing with a certain profile of a customer? Are you better at selling a certain type of product versus others? So there are so many hypotheses that can be tested along the way, and that is where I think the entire architecture at the back, where you're able to get all this data, and you have an analytics platform which is able to analyze all of this, and over time, because again, you need to study that individual over time to be able to get more accurate with your analysis, like you mentioned, right? The level of significance of the analysis. I mean, at 5% level of significance, would you want to say this hypothesis is actually meaningful? And then you're testing this again. You are bases the hypothesis, you're making some changes and giving some insights to these users. And then that, if you're seeing whether that's actually impacting results, so it becomes a virtuous cycle, right? So you're testing along the way, like you said, beta testing is happening. You're testing with notifications, nudges, and everything else, seeing impact. And if that's not really working, refine it. And again, so you test, the cycle goes on. But that's why over time you will get better at it. But like Jen mentioned, I think you're right, that there needs to be a very thought through approach of how this analytics is going to be done. What are the data points that are useful? Where are these data points coming from? How are they being linked at the metadata level with the entire analysis that you want to do, and using that to ensure that you're stitching together these journeys, and then you're able to use the data coming from there to deliver more value to the customers and to the sellers is not an easy. It sounds very easy when you talk about it, but it's not really easy to deliver.
Well, that's certainly another aspect for data. But since we are on the topic on data, Jen, how would a good data strategy look like, and how should it be, or how insurance companies should go about implementing them? Perhaps I can hear your view, and then Rajesh, you may follow up with your views as well.
So data strategy. Wow. And if we throw in the realities that we have all faced, which is what COVID has done to all of us, hybrid working and PDPA, PII, privacy, a data strategy has to be flexible, right? And it can't be what I call sequential. So first your strategy, then this, and then this. Like, you have to have some level of synchronicity and a lot of orchestrating to be able to make it a reality, right? Because there is absolutely, and no matter, I've seen it on McKinsey, on BCG, a sound data strategy we will develop. They do the beautiful, fantastic frameworks. When it comes down to execution, it never works like that. It never works like that, not even in your transition to cloud, right? Because there's much more complexity around it. And so for me, it's super important, first, that it is flexible. Number two, that it is in tandem with a data governance strategy. And why is this important? A data governance strategy is not people get very scared about the word governance. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's like, oh, we're going to go put up a whole bunch of red tape and a lot of policies. We're not going to get access. We're going to minimize who uses it, who's going to be the data owner. And it just becomes what I would say, a massive, very political, heavy theoretical initiative that should actually be an agile, nimble, very, very livid program inside organizations, right? And that is very, very critical. And it's important that the people who are running data governance not only have understood it, right? So it can be a data operations person, it can be an ex-consultant, it can be a marketing person. To be really honest, it's just somebody who has the ability to think laterally. I think that's super important. And so while you're thinking about the flexibility of your strategy, you have to think about where it sits in organizational design, right? And that really comes down to whichever company. There's no right or wrong answers. If you want to have a federated approach or you want to have kind of a centralized approach, it depends on where you're at, right? But the second piece to that is, while you're developing your data governance, and there's pretty much just 3 pillars that go with data governance, which is quality, super critical, right? You know, as we all say, no, you know, rubbish put in, rubbish come out. So that's super important. Understanding integrity of where it sits, understanding customer integrity that's going in, and that you're partnering with your risk and with your compliance, that you're partnering with your risk and your compliance partners. Not seeing them on the other side of the table. It's so important. And then last but not least, understanding where the core capability and the core importance of your customer data sets versus where your innovation, data for innovation sits. Because when you start scaling out, for example, really ambitious goals around AI and machine learning, you have to have that clear. And guess what? That needs to have an encompassing overall end-to-end data governance framework to be able to be successful.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jen. And just to add to this, right, if you look at the data, there are, I mean, you can define data in many ways. I mean, there's transactional data that is happening. There's social, data that's just outside the access of an insurance company. But there are solutions available where you can enrich your data based on additional information, which is not really available to the insurance companies from the transactions that they are having with the customer, right? And that's where I think, like Jen mentioned, first level is to ensure that you get your basic data structures correct in terms of what data is available to you, and you're capturing that and using that in the right way. The next is the innovation bit, which is what for AI ML that Jen was referring to, where what can you use additionally, which is not available to you, by way of partnerships, by way of ecosystem that you're trying to create for the customers, right? And a lot of companies have done this very, very well. Actually, when Ping An comes to mind with the model that they created an open ecosystem. So they have the customer at the center, they're providing certain solutions, and they had other partners, join the ecosystem to serve the customer's requirements. And that also gave them a lot of data points, which are outside of what they would have otherwise collected being an insurance company. So there is going to be, an approach where partners, and as again, Jen pointed out, that you can't be treating them as outside. It's part of an ecosystem. They're all together, and you're sharing each other, in terms of data within obviously the framework of the PDPA and other privacy requirements that are there. And if you're enabling and using the data to ensure that creating value for the customer and everybody else in the entire ecosystem, that's the true value of this. But again, all of this data, ability to ensure that this is available, analyzed properly, and all of that needs to be the strategy that that Jen was referring to, that you need to have that very clear and everything aligned so that you can make best use of the data that you have, so to speak.
Yeah, and if I had to prioritize, really, if you ask me, okay, Jen, but if we had to start somewhere, I would go with quality. Your data quality has to be like the #1 thing.
Yeah, and again, in this world, Jen, today with the, big data is obviously being hammered to death in terms of the potential opportunities there, but also the noise. There's so much data that may not be even relevant, right? So it depends on really picking, like you said, the quality of the data is what are the data sets that are critical for you, what are the data points that matter to you, right? And understanding that, and I'm sure there are a lot of actuarial programs which they run to assess which data will have what impact on outcomes, right? And they identify which data sets are critical. But I guess that's the thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, that is also certainly interesting. Rajesh, I noticed that you mentioned the ecosystem twice in your reply and your thoughts. Jen, when we talk about the ecosystem development for InsurTech and stuff like that, what are the key components that has to be developed for the ecosystem to make sure, in this case, for data management wise, what are the key areas in the ecosystem that has to be defined or has to be in place for all these to work?
Very simple. I have a framework that always comes to mind, and it has not failed me in any one. I think the first one is quality, but this is why I started that. The other one is security. you need to have a proper cybersecurity, information technology security in place. And the other one, have a very clear understanding, because we talk about ecosystem, let's talk about integration with partner data of what rules of engagement looks like. And that again goes back to governance and why it's important to establish the ownership. Right. I'll give you an example. When I was my early days at NTUC Income, one of the things that we worked very closely was with the the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the MAS, to try to launch a first ever full end-to-end parametric insurance product. And so this product that the Digital Transformation Office at the time ran was is called Droplet, right? And pretty much what it did was provide customers that were booking their taxis through Grab and through Gojek the opportunity to get a payback from the surcharge because the day was raining, right? And so in that case, we were utilizing three data points. One was the weather API, which is, thank God, in Singapore it rains 70% of the year, so it's pretty easy to get that data. You got the beacons from the weather APIs, and it says that anything over 2 millimeters of waterfall is considered rain. So that was a good point. We had our own actuary system that developed by a fantastic team. Like it was pretty incredible how they did it really quickly. And the third one, the open APIs with Grab and Gojek and the other hail writing companies, right? And so what was really interesting back then is that we were supported by the MAS to be able to get this done, right? Because the whole process overall was done under a sandbox that was very clear, very unified. And we launched the first ever kind of RPA also for operations to understand which claims were being fraudulent, what wasn't fraudulent, and to really minimize the operation side. And so what had taken the team, maybe at the beginning, maybe 6 months to kind of ideate, it wasn't until we partnered very closely with the authorities to give us that freedom, right? And so that created a very different ecosystem. We're talking about 3 different partners kind of solving for a very specific customer pain point. And I think that was one of the closest in terms of success that I've seen. And the reason why, well, it's because why? Well, number one, we were very clean with the data we were utilizing. We made sure that everything made sense. Number two, we were very, very respectful around who owned what data, the PII data. So customers that were actually buying the policy the day before, ensuring that they were sending their email address to us to ensure that we can pay them completely on their pay now or through QR code really quickly. That belonged to us. However, the data that we were getting from the weather APIs and from Grab and Gojek are public data. So we knew very clearly exactly how we were managing this, and this created a fabulous ecosystem. I believe that go on and to grow into something bigger. The DTO team under Peter Day and Max have been fantastic. They're just really, creating new innovation, and I think they're at the forefront of managing data in that way because of the solutions that they're providing.
Talk about the innovation. Does it really guarantee customer experience, in this case, a positive one?
Yes, absolutely, right? Because I feel, Gordon, you know how it is in Singapore. How many times have you tried to go when you're booking a Grab or Gojek, and suddenly your ride that should take you from, the CBD to Changi Airport was generally $20. It goes up to $60 or to $80. That is pretty shocking. And you know that you can't take the MRT. The pain point was delivered really quickly. People bought the policy, and then they would get paid back around 60% of their charge. And I think that is what really matters, right? What matters at the end of the day is not only about the company, about the ecosystem, about the data privacy. It depends on what value are you bringing to the end consumer.
Okay. Rajesh, you're also in Singapore. And what do you think in terms of regional innovations in Singapore when compared to the rest of the, say, ASEAN, Thailand, Indonesia? What do you think are the stark difference of innovation in Singapore, whereby insurance are concerned, compared to Indonesia? This is actually a very broad kind of a definition that what you see in your capacity.
Yeah, I think For innovation to flourish, right, you obviously need to have regulatory support and guide. So the fact that the regulator has a sandbox that they've created, and I think similarly other regulators are also trying to do that. So for instance, in India as well, I believe there is a sandbox environment that's been created, and Malaysia and other markets are also looking at this. So Singapore in the region, and what Singapore regulator does is looked at very closely by BNM, by OJK, by the Thai regulator OIC as well, because they feel that here is where our regulations are actually delivering value in terms of ensuring that the right amount of control and right amount of freedom or flexibility is being provided through the regulations to ensure that the industry is growing and profitable, and also you're balancing the fact that the customers have also to be taken care of as far as the regulations are concerned, right? In terms of ensuring that they are not at the receiving end of any changes that the insurance companies may want to do by themselves. So to that extent, I feel Singapore innovation is one of the hotbeds of innovation actually in the Asian region. And a lot of innovation is happening here. A lot of startups have started here as well. But the sheer size, if you were to look at the size, Singapore is very tiny if you compare it with India or Indonesia. The number of unicorns last year, where in India had the highest number of unicorns globally. Now, given the size of that country and given the size of the number of the people in the population there and the amount of tech, qualified people that are available there, you then can't compare. So it depends on what are you comparing with. But I believe Singapore is really driving towards ensuring that it remains a hub where innovation is being allowed to prosper through various ways and means. There's a lot of investment pouring in as well, because again, as a market, if you look at amongst the various financial capitals of the world, Singapore, Hong Kong, and in Asia, at least Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Beijing are the leading, and Bombay as well to that extent are the leading countries where you have this our financial capitals of the world. So you'll have more people pouring in money here, you'll get more talent here. So all of that actually adds up to the innovation itself being driven. So I believe from that perspective, I think Singapore may see a lot more innovation coming through, and which will then get obviously very easily moved around, right, in Asia, and people can use those innovation and innovative ideas in their geographies too.
Yes, I think I totally agree with that point. And well, we come to almost the end of our session, a very interesting session today. We still have some time, say about 10 minutes, and we have some questions from the floor. Let me click on this. Just let me let me point out this question from Sunamas, referring to the point of the app silos that agents have to use for insurance. There are some executives in the industry who today say that if a person, bracket agent in this case, can use 7 to 8 apps to go about his day, why can't he do the same for insurance as well? So what are your views on that?
Oh, wow. I would just want to thank you so much for posing that question. And no offense to the industry leaders on this one, and if I am, offense is coming, so excuse me for that one. It's I think it's a lack of empathy and understanding. What a customer does and what a person does with interpersonal communication apps is very, very different from productive apps. If you have ever tried to do both interpersonal tasks, communications, plus working only on your mobile phone, you can see how challenging it is. And generally you see it, agents and sellers are like with 3, 4 mobile phones, and then with the tablet. And I can say they get it done. I'm not saying they don't get it done, but at what cost? At what cost from an attention, from an efficiency and a productivity perspective? So I think what's happening with those industry leaders, I think they have a bit of a narrow view of what this really looks like. I do believe that there's got to be a simplification in terms of the products and selling tools that agents and sellers have in order for them to have meaningful conversations. We all know it. Time and attention. I think there was an analysis recently done by the IAB where they said that advertising sales overall on content and in-app and both on desktop are declining rapidly because people just don't care anymore. So we are pretty much waging a war on people's attention. If you want your sellers to be successful, help them get that focus and that attention and that clarity by simplifying. don't expect that because they use WhatsApp and they use Line and they use Grab, that they can also do the same to be able to carry out the work, like sell a $1 million Thai baht, 1 million Thai baht policy for you. I think that would be my answer to that.
And then Rajesh, what are your thoughts on that as well? I'm sure you have a provoking thought on this question.
No, I agree. I think on the it also goes back to the let's say the nature of what is trying to be accomplished when you're using an enterprise application versus when you're using personal application. So if you were to connect with somebody, you want to use a WhatsApp, or you may even call the person, or a Zoom, right? Or if you're using your other application for booking a cab, or you want to book an airline ticket. So these are all independent point activities that you're doing for which you're using multiple apps, which is fair, right? And you have a banking app for your banking needs. You have maybe another app for reading. You have a Kindle app. So these are all needs that you're satisfying for various different things that you have on a personal front. When it comes to corporate and an enterprise, you're going to give them a single pane of glass experience because they spend 8 hours in a day doing that job, right? And you need to ensure that the process itself is simplified for them. And you're complicating the process by having multiple point apps there. So from my point of view, I don't think we can compare personal with, they call it the Internet of Me, right? IoT, Internet of Things, and Internet of Me, because I have multiple apps, and I have those apps because they serve a particular purpose for me, right? But when it comes to work, I would rather have one app which I can use for my entire journey, and what I have to deliver during the day. At the back end, I don't care, if it needs to connect with multiple other things, but for me, I need a simplified process, because as Jen pointed out, I think it's a very valid point she made. How much time am I going to spend? Am I wasting by having to jump between applications? And by doing that, how many different data points, unconnected islands of data, are we creating? Right? So that is a challenge that needs to be solved. So I don't think enterprise can be compared with personal.
Yes, totally agree on that. Personally, I have used WhatsApp, Line. In Thailand, we use Line, and I'm sure Jen will agree. And then we have other host of apps that we do on a daily basis, like taking the Grab app, and say even for emails, we use Gmail app and stuff like that. So yeah, that certainly takes a lot of time. And we are not really looking at the mother of all apps in this case. Yeah, but when we work-wise, if we can have a single pane of glass, I believe that will help us in our daily activities, sales-wise, reporting-wise, data management as well. So yeah, I totally agree with you guys on this manner. We have another question, but this time is from an anonymous attendee. Just let me raise this question. May I have a question regarding in insurance company, or in this case, can finance process invoice using digital transformation, which is paperless, according to these attendees, and how can it be, I should say, part of transformation, or does audit still require or need paper-based for check and reviews? If can, it will be beneficial for sales team and mobility use apps. So, what are your thoughts on this? Rajesh, let's let it go this time.
So if I understand correctly, I think the question is saying, in insurance, can we have a paperless process for applications? And I guess, I think if that's the question, if I've understood that correctly, I think many countries, many companies have already achieved that. I mean, there are 100% e-applications that are happening. The entire process is digitized. The application, so physical applications are not being used from that perspective. And I think India was the first, if I look at the next level, India was the first company which went ahead and also said e-policy issuances to happen and they had this, like you have a demat. So they had dematerialized insurance policies as well. So like you have dematerialized shares. So they had dematerialized insurance policies, which means you may have an account with one of those agencies where you hold all your insurance policies in demat form, which is obviously digital. So any changes that you're doing, let's say if you're changing your address, and if you have 5 policies, previously you would have had to go to 5 companies and tell them that your address has changed. Now you go to this one intermediary that you have, which is like which is where you're holding an account where all your 5 insurance policies are, and that just one intimation is going to ensure that at the back end digitally all the companies update their your address in their system. So I guess that the entire journey has become digital, and there are also so one component of an insurance sales process is for an agent or somebody to verify that this person that you're insuring is alive, right? I mean, that's the main kind of a risk factor. So we do also have now liveness checks, which are also digital, where people can actually look at a selfie that is being taken and ensure that there's a selfie of a live person, not a photo of a photo. So those technologies are also available, right? So eKYCs. So you look at the entire journey, all of that today, including underwriting and everything else, is digitized. When there is medical underwriting requirements, obviously that becomes a physical. You need to go and get your medicals done, so that becomes a kind of a physical part of the process. But eventually, most of the paperwork has been cut out. So, I mean, it's converted to more digital ways of doing things. I think Jen can add, being directly in an insurance company, she would know better, but that's what I thought.
And thank you so much, anonymous attendee. I think the specific was around also finance, because in its auditing, to be really honest. So audit in traditional insurance companies is still pretty much regulated, highly regulated, meaning that they do still require by law printed invoicing. That has not changed in many companies, right? And I'll give you an example. Even OIC requests that all the policies and everything are held in offline, so not on cloud, just for security purposes. And I think this had to do, I think it's changing, right? So I think what we are seeing is not a lack of solutions, as Rajesh just rightly pointed out. There's so many solutions for paperless. And I think we're heading in that direction. Where the transformation needs to come is on auditing and on policies and pretty much on regulation. So the more the regulators transform and change, I think you will see better adoption around paperless and holding. So for example, right now, a lot of the policies still need to be printed out and held for 10 years, which is insane. So I'll give you an example. When Prudential moved offices, we've got an amazing new office. And with that, we had a whole bunch of boxes as well because of this, right? And it had nothing to do with lack of technology, lack of transformation. It was just request from regulators. So that is something that I feel within the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to change, because everybody sees not only the productivity, but also as we get more ERG and more, we're all conscious about our carbon footprint and what we need to do to the environment. We realize that printing document is harmful. And so once you have those mandates and that top-down executive level, which I believe Prudential is very, very strong at, and ensuring that they want to lead in paperless and in green technologies, it's something that it's just a matter of time. I think that's my personal opinion.
And it boils back to the data management phase that you actually touched on earlier. And of course, the regulators, they have their own sets of policy. The individual companies have their own sets of policy in this case.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jennifer. I mean, regulations have to amend this to make this possible, where you don't really need to print out documents and send the policy bonds, etc. I remember our old policies were all physical copies, which we used to receive in terms of, but now I think, as I said, in some jurisdictions, in some regulated environments, we are getting electronic copies. I mean, so it's really the way. So one is the copies itself, the bond itself, but also the process itself and the application process. All of that has become digitized. And I guess countries, like you said, Jen, also the bit about carbon footprint and ESG awareness. I think it's going to ensure that everybody moves to a more paperless environment, I guess.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think this has been, time really flies when we are deep diving into these topics, data management and stuff like that. So thank you, the floor, for the questions, and thank you, Jen and Rajesh, for your time today. And I would like to hand this over back to Muskan. Muskan, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you everybody for attending, listening in, asking all of those insightful questions. Rajesh, Jen, this has been an amazing session. I think everyone learned a lot more than what they knew before the webinar. And Gordon, thank you so much for facilitating, asking questions, making this as engaging as it was. Everyone who attended, we will send you a copy of the recording of the webinar just for you to share it with your peers, or watch it offline. And if you have any questions that you couldn't ask today in the session, then I would definitely encourage you to just reply to the email that we sent to you, and we will definitely get you in touch with either Rajesh or Jen for you to answer all of those questions. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Sawadee
Bye-bye.
Care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.